to our Groundskeeper chat series. I am your host, Meg Kruger, and you are joining us for a special edition 2025 Pioneers in the Field episode. Today, we are going to be interviewing Mr. Ryan Bjorn. He is the field superintendent at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. So, welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
And we also have our co-host, Mr. Christopher Bell. And today may
Yes.
be the first episode that I've properly introduced you. I typically, get 30 minutes in and remember that you're here and say, "Oh, hey,
Well,
Chris."
you're good to have me for like 1 out of 10 episodes to show up. So
True,
so
true.
can you forget that I'm here?
It's a two-way street here. That you sometimes want to join me, sometimes want to guilt me about, not including you. And then, it's
It's
a
a
strange game that you're playing. I can never
Some people
understand.
call it toxic, but
Yeah. Definitely.
Everybody has their own definition.
Yes,
yeah.
definitely. Well, Ryan, thank you for joining us. As I mentioned before we, started recording, I said this episode is going to be all about you, which you were like, thank God, finally somebody is going to give me a platform to talk about myself. I'm so
Yeah.
sick of getting looked over. So
Yeah.
today that here's your chance. So I mean, I think what we can do is start right at the beginning with your turf origin story. How did this come on your radar? I know the story by now, but for our listeners, how did this career option really become on your radar? And then when was that like tipping point where you're like, oh, I could, do this for the rest of my life?
Yeah, sure. Well, before I start on that, I want to make sure I clarify. Meg was being facetious when she said that. We were talking before. I hate talking about myself, so I'm a little stressed about this interview, but it should be easier, because at least I do know the answers to hopefully most of the questions. But
Definitely.
um, yeah, so my turf origin story, I think it's nothing crazy compared to a lot of other turf managers out there. I was in my teenage years and didn't really know what I wanted to do and needed a summer job. And one of my longest time friends from home, he and I were, when Ted Williams died, famous Red Sox player, they put his number 9 in the outfield at Fenway Park, and that just that blew our minds. We were young, we had no idea any of that
That's
stuff
so
happened.
cool.
So my mother loves to tell the story because we saw that and thought we can do that, and so we went out into my backyard and took our 21-inch push mower
Oh no.
and set it as low as we possibly could and scalped the 9 into the backyard and thought that's how they did it. So that was kind of my first real foray into turf. It was incorrect in all possible ways, but um, then I started working at a golf course, like a local muni
hmm
in Bangor, Maine. I grew up in Old Town, Maine, and so it was like 5, 10 minutes away, and it was just a great summer job being outside. And I just started really playing golf at the time, so it was a good excuse to get some free golf rounds in after work. And that developed into our assistant at Bangor at the Muni at the time. He was a turf student or had been a turf student and told me about the industry. So that was the first time I'd really found out about
Very cool.
turf as a career. At that point, my that same friend of mine and we had plans to go into landscaping long term and open our own business. And so I initially went to school, college. In Vermont at Vermont
Okay.
Technical College for landscape design, ornamental horticulture, and really enjoyed it. But while I was in school there, I attended New England Grows, which is a big landscape conference in New England and
Okay.
Boston. And Dave Meller, at the time, the head groundskeeper at Fenway, did a keynote presentation, and I sat in on it. And really, that kind of opened my eyes to the world of sports turf, because up until that point, I thought it was all golf. Um, and once I found out about that, I kind of really never looked back. I finished my degree at Vermont Tech and transferred to the Stockbridge School, which is the agricultural school at UMass Amherst, and started in 2007 at UMass. Did my first internship with Dave at Fenway,
Very
and
cool.
ended up working there all 4 years while I got my turf degree at UMass. So I kind of Van Wildered it in college. I was in school for almost 8 years total because I got a landscape degree that I don't really use first, and then went to school for turf. But while I was at UMass, we were driving back and forth from Amherst to Boston on weekends and working games and homestands and stuff like that. And then I also did one summer with Rick Peruzzi in the city of South Portland, Maine,
Hmm.
which was a great intro into a different side of sports turf where it is a like a Parks and Rec type facility, but it is maintained at an extremely high level. And so I learned a lot with Rick that summer, and that opened my eyes to what else could potentially be out there besides pro sports. Um, Graduated UMass in 2010, finished out the season with Dave at Fenway. And around October, I didn't have a full-time job. The baseball season ended, and he was nice enough to set me up with John Bankston, who was the field superintendent at Gillette Stadium at the time. And
Okay.
so I jumped on John's crew to finish out the football season in 2010, and worked all winter until January of 2011. And at that point, interviewed and was offered a position as an assistant manager in training down in down in Maryland at the Maryland Soccerplex, working for Jared Minnick. And I packed up my Jetta and drove to a state I'd never been to before and started my full-time turf career at the Soccerplex. And over the next 4 or 5 years, worked my way up to assistant and then manager. And then when Jared left in 2014 or 2015, I took over as director of grounds down there at the Soccerplex. So
Very cool.
stayed there for another 4 years and got a call in 2019 from Gillette, from the folks here at Foxborough, and they asked if I'd be interested in interviewing for the position of field superintendent, and I said absolutely. And they were nice enough, and I was lucky enough to get offered the position. So I've been here since 2019.
So cool. So many things in that story that caught my attention and really just to take it back to the beginning, we post on social media or we get those quick clips from news coverage or even just during the game, the camera crew will, show something that the grounds crew did. And we may not think twice about it, but that's really what piqued your initial interest was somebody spending that extra time to do a different design, do something cool, bring life to the field in a sense. And then somebody decided to highlight that, and then you were forever changed after that. And how we just think, oh, we're gonna go do a cool design, or we'll give this person 30 minutes to, talk about top dressing or something, and how that can really spark a whole nother journey for someone. I just think that's a really cool part of your story.
Yeah, I
Not the
never thought
scalping the backyard, of course.
it's all a part of it, it's all a
Yeah.
part of it.
And you definitely had some, huge mentors in there as well. I just spent some time with Rick last week. I mean, he's been a longtime friend of the series, but also just like what a guy. He is like 100%. I think we joked when I saw you that if Matt Tobin is his number one fan, you're right there in line. And I think I'll round out the fan club for us, and
Yeah,
we could
yeah.
be a Three Musketeers there because he is just like top notch when it comes to the person you'd want to, not only as a professional, but the type of guy he is as well.
Yeah, I learned so much, excuse me, from Rick that summer, and literally it was just a summer internship, but from that we're still friends to this day. We see each other at conference all the time. We'll chat on the phone, and seeing what he was able to do there at a true Parks and Rec facility, but
Hmm.
the quality he was able to maintain and the techniques he was using, and being one of the early adopters of an organic program, which has come to huge help in the present, because I know they deal with a lot of restrictions in that
Yeah,
area. So he was like an early adopter of that, and his attitude, his work ethic, it was something that myself and everyone else that worked for him, really looked up to and tried to model after. So I owe a lot to him.
definitely. And when I was talking with Chase Straw and Weston about Chase doing back-to-back summers with the Red Sox, Weston said that was really not typical for interns to return. One, because it was such a grueling internship, like both mentally, physically. But it sounds like you said you returned 4 summers in a row.
Yeah, it was a little different for us. So there was a group
Okay.
of 4 or 5 of us that were all UMass students, a couple turf guys and a couple non-turf. Like I think One is now a sergeant in a police department.
Wow.
There's a few of us, and one's like a financial director somewhere. So there was a group that all of us were friends that lived together, and it was kind of word of mouth that everyone worked on the crew, and we
Very
would
cool.
just it was good opportunity to go back and make some extra cash for those guys, and for us, the turf students, it was an opportunity to we did an internship 1 year, and then we just were kept on as grounds crew members for the
Very
following
cool.
years. So
Very
yeah.
cool. And yeah,
So do you
like,
bring in, oh,
sorry, go ahead,
sorry. I
Chris.
was gonna say, so do you bring in now in your position summer assistance, summer help, like the position you had at one time?
Yeah,
No,
we try. We've posted internship opportunities. We haven't had a ton of interest, and it's a really competitive market, obviously.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, at the risk of sounding like making excuses, I do think that some people see a posting from us as Gillette Stadium and only think it's the stadium field, artificial field. What am I going to learn there? When in
Mhm.
reality, we have, six natural grass fields,
Hmm.
two different sports, multi-use. There's a ton of learning that can be had here. So we're working on some new ideas and some getting creative with how we're gonna post it, and even maybe potentially opening it up to so Danny Lucido in Carolina and that whole
Hmm.
area. They've done a really good job creating these internships where it's multi-venue
Yeah.
internships. So they'll do 4 weeks at the football stadium, 4 weeks at a minor league baseball stadium, 4 weeks at a sod farm. And so we're trying to kind of not steal his idea necessarily, but model our idea here locally after that, where we try and even do like 4 weeks with us, 4 weeks with a golf course potentially, and then
Very
four
cool.
weeks with a construction company. So just to try and add more value to that internship and get people that experience, because people always ask, what's a recommendation you'd give to a student? And a lot of what people say, myself included, is try as many things as you can
Hmm.
while you're in school. But that could be hard if it's a full summer every time, where if we could break it down for one summer, you get to try three different aspects of the turf industry. That could be a good opportunity. So
So what I'm hearing is if I'm a turf student and I'm listening to this podcast and I hear there's a heck of an opportunity out there that isn't being tapped, I should be sending my resume in.
please do. Yeah, please send a resume. Yeah, we'll try and get it posted as early as we can this fall, because that's generally when whether it's new students or people that are looking for internships for next year are looking. So our goal is to have that kind of finalized, and we'll get it distributed to all the schools.
Sounds like it would be a fantastic program and really effective, inspiring, but
Definitely.
also teaching for their future careers.
Yeah, we hope
Well,
so.
and I think like you're exactly right where the misconception is like, oh, it's Gillette Stadium, it's going to be one field, it's artificial, like maybe some paint. But you took me around last week and I would have never assumed it's comparable to like a massive campus almost. Like we had to drive in your car from place to place and like I have Disney on my mind just because that's like, it was comparable to that where it was like all these different like worlds almost where it was like, the Gillette Stadium and where we have games, but then you had all those fields right out of the stadium and then you had the Revolution site. Like it was incredible to see all the living, breathing, facets that you were taking care of.
Yeah, the facility is really unique, and the site is really unique. Where there are obviously other stadiums that have MLS and NFL, but I do think we are the only one that has a multi professional team stadium and both the training facilities for both teams on site as well.
Hmm.
So we have the three fields right out behind the stadium, or the three practice fields for the NFL team, the Patriots, and then we have a whole training center that's on site, that it's not far, but it's not right next door, and you can take a golf cart or a mower and just drive right out there. Where the MLS has their own three grass fields and an artificial field out back. So yeah, it's a unique site. And not to mention all the hotels and shopping and restaurants and everything else. Mr. Kraft, when he came up with this idea, he was kind of a leader in the industry with creating this one-stop shop for all
Yeah.
these events, and people can come here and do whatever they need to, and whether it's a professional athlete that needs to come here and train and play his games, or just somebody that wants to come and do some shopping and attend a soccer game or Monster Jam or Supercross or a concert or whatever else that we have going on here.
It's so cool. I absolutely love it. But one question I want to ask before we move on is where did the friend end up? Did he end up starting a landscaping business, or is he, an accountant or something?
Yeah, so he's done a lot of different things. He started in landscaping and
Okay.
he's done a bunch of different things. He currently works for a company that sells power carving tools, which it's a very specific like niche industry, but
Yeah.
it's super super busy, and the people that do that stuff are crazy about it. So he's really happy where he's at, and yeah, it's definitely different career paths, but I think there's always the opportunity we could come back into business together someday too. So
I love it. We'll keep that on the
yeah,
back burner for sure.
yeah.
Um, and the other question I wanted to ask is, could you like if you had to take yourself back to like 16, 17, 18-year-old Ryan and look at yourself now, like do you think this was always once you knew that this was possible, do you think the NFL and running a site like this was always on the horizon, or is this bigger than you could have ever imagined?
I mean, it's a great question. I think if there's a lot I'd probably tell myself if I was 16, 17, or I could talk to my 16, 17-year-old self. Not much of it would have to do with turf, but um, I think it's one of those things that once you get into the industry, fairly or unfairly, a head job at a professional facility tends to be like the goal for a lot of people. For me, I always felt like I wanted to end up at a university or somewhere that
Mhm.
had multiple sports and
Okay.
because I just liked having different things. I didn't want to do the same thing over and over. And so, luckily here, again, being a unique facility, it is more like a campus than it would be at a single training site or a single stadium field or whatever that is, which I like because no day is ever the same, which that has its own challenges for sure, but
Mhm.
it is nice to be able to have two different sports and then all the other events that we have going on here as well.
Definitely. And I'll say at my sixth grade career day, I dressed up as a talk show host. So if I had to go back and talk to that person, I'd be like, look at what you're doing. Like, it's not daytime, but it's still something.
It's daytime right now.
That's true. Chris, what
Yeah.
did you want to do at your career day? What did you see yourself running, unruly employees such as myself at a paint company in Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, I remember career day in high school, and I remember thinking, I really want to go home.
Nice.
That's all I remember. I remember I talked to a guy who was an airline pilot, and I thought, how do you do that? And then I moved on.
And
That's
you've
all I
carried that
remember.
sentiment throughout that you
I
just
had
really
no
want to go
aspirations to
home.
be anything, and so it's worked out perfectly for me.
It's funny you
Oh,
say airline
geez.
pilots. So my two cousins, so I grew up an only child. I have three cousins from the same family and two boys, and we were like kind of like brothers growing up. We hung out
Hmm.
all the time, and every year we would go to the Brunswick, Maine Naval Air Station air show, and we all, from like when we were like this tall all the way up to like when we were teenagers, we're like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna be pilots. Like we're gonna fly fighter jets and blah blah blah. And both of them got full appointments to Air Force Academy and are actual pilots. And
Oh my
I,
gosh.
maintain grass for a living. So we joke about that all the time. But they also give me a hard time because I'll send them pictures of me on a tractor, and they're
Hmm.
jealous of me being on a tractor where I would rather be flying a jet. So it's funny you mentioned that because that was always something that interests me, but they actually followed through with it. So
I love it.
I did
Well, the
shout
enjoy
out
grass is
to
that.
always
Matt and Mike.
greener.
When I
Yeah.
was really young, I did enjoy riding with the garbage men. No kidding. I meet them at the top of my street. I
Yeah.
dumped the garbage, and they let me pull the handle to smush the garbage, and then they let me hold on the back of the truck and ride it. It was
Yep.
awesome. I loved it.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I didn't
your
become a
lost
garbage man, so
calling.
I'm a failure.
Maybe you could point your kids in that direction. Garbage men.
If they're
Yeah.
happy.
That's
Exactly.
right. So, we talked a little bit about your mentors, but who are some of those people that when you look back, it's like, okay, meeting this person like just changed the course of, having them as, a boss or a peer or an employee, like they really impacted, my career here in this industry.
Yeah, there's so many.
Hmm.
I inevitably am gonna leave someone out unintentionally, but the I had a pretty structured um, growth to my career, and I attribute a lot of that to the people that I worked for. And you asked the question of were the people that you worked for or were your peers. And to me, the best mentors are kind of both.
Yeah.
And starting with Rick, obviously we talked about Rick already. Dave Miller at Fenway, that was he was a huge influence on me for a lot of different ways. And his assistant at the time, Jason Griffith, who has since he went down to Daytona International Speedway for a while and was working in Florida for a while, and then he's said, oh, that was Boyd. I don't know if you heard that or not,
No,
but he
no,
was.
you're clear.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, he just
Did he
started barking
bark?
at someone. Yeah, he's
Nice.
trying to bark at someone coming in the office. Um, but hold on one sec.
No problem.
There he is.
The cutest security guard.
Yeah, he evidently doesn't want anybody coming in the office right now.
I
So,
love
Oh
it.
boy.
yeah. So, and Jason is now working with FIFA on the World Cup,
Oh, very
doing stuff
cool.
at the practice sites, working with Weston, and then that
Oh,
ties in
okay.
nicely.
Is that
Yeah,
how Weston got tangled into all this?
yeah. Well, Weston actually brought Jason in, so
Okay, okay.
it's a tangled web we weave and all that. But
Truly.
so yeah, and that brings me to Weston. Obviously, I worked with Weston and Griff at Fenway, and Wes and I have become and stayed really good friends for a long time, and he's a huge influence on me. He's someone that I call, and he'll get a kick out of hearing this because he knows I don't pick up the phone hardly ever. It's a trait that is terrible of mine, but when we do, it's always great to catch up. And if I have questions about anything, I know that he's always ever a phone call away. Jared Minnick at the Soccerplex
Hmm.
kind of took me under his wing when had no idea what I was doing in the industry, moving down to Maryland, had never dealt with Bermuda grass before, and he was a really great resource on kind of how to think differently about stuff
Yeah.
because you come out of school and this is your turf 101, this is how you maintain grass, and down there at the Soccerplex you want to talk about a facility that's a Parks and Rec facility that maintains fields at an elite level. We had to really get creative with how to handle those situations, and he was really good about not being afraid to try new things, not being afraid, or kind of creating that culture of his employees for us to try to come up with ideas and
Mhm.
and not be afraid if didn't work, they didn't work, but don't be afraid to try something different. So I've tried to incorporate that into my management style and how we take care of our grass here as well. So I owe a lot to him for that. John Bankson, superintendent here at Gillette, that I only worked for him for like 6 or 7 months, but we stayed in touch the whole time I was in Maryland. He was one of the hardest working superintendents I've ever experienced. Like he was super hands on, and so that is another thing. It's just trying to take little pieces of
Yeah.
and tidbits from every experience that you have, and try and create the best management style you can. That's the way I've tried to go about it.
Do you
So
ever
I
find
owe
yourself sharing what you learned from those guys with the people who work with you now? Like you catch yourself, oh gosh, that's something Weston taught me. Oh, that's something what John taught me.
Yeah, I maybe not directly, but I think it's just there are definitely specific skills and techniques that you could point to, but just overall management style, I think, is the
Mhm.
biggest thing where trying to be inclusive, trying to be open-minded, and not necessarily saying, I'm the boss, this is how we're doing it. Like, that just to me has never worked.
Right.
So you know, I go back to a story when I was at Fenway and, probably 21 years old, very, very green in the industry, was tasked with filling up a mower. And I put gas in the mower and it was a diesel engine. And
Mhm.
it was one of those things where it was like, I thought I was going to get fired. I thought it was like the end of the world. The equipment's dead. It's a 70,000 mower, $70,000 mower that's ruined. And at the end of the day, it was a learning experience. And that's
Mhm.
how it was treated with Weston and Griff. It was like, listen, you did screw up. This is a mistake, but it could have been worse, one. And two, just learn from it. Like the big thing for me is making mistakes is fine. Making the same mistake twice is an issue.
Mhm.
And as long as you can learn from the mistakes that you make, nobody's going to go through their entire career and not make mistakes. And that's the biggest thing I've learned from all of my superiors that I've worked for is you got to be willing to work with the staff that you have and be understanding when people make mistakes, but use them as learning experiences.
I love that. And I mean, I think Meg could learn from that. Don't make the same mistake twice.
Well, it's weird, Chris. When I was hearing him say that, I was thinking like, can't relate. I've never made a mistake in my life.
Oh, sorry. Don't
Must
make
be
it about us
nice.
again.
Yeah.
But that kind of sounds like, a philosophy or even just like, a general compass that you use is your in your management style. Is there anything else that you try and pull on, is whether it's a philosophy or just a way of life that you try and incorporate not only in how you lead but just how you go about this job?
Well, that's a tough one. I think asking the people I work with would probably be a better way to get that answer.
Definitely.
Hopefully, it would be a good answer. I don't know, but um, I think again, it's just creating an open, inclusive atmosphere is
Mhm.
important for me. I don't want people to come to work and be afraid to make a mistake. I don't want people to come to work and be afraid to make a suggestion. I think being collaborative with your staff and the other people that we work with in the stadium is a big one too. Whether
Mhm.
it's, obviously within our own field crew staff is one thing, but we do a lot. We have a lot of partners here at the stadium, whether it's the ops team that does a lot of the setup around the field, the events team that are the ones that are selling the events and setting them up and have to make the requests. So staying involved and trying to be involved in as many of those discussions, it can be super taxing and I feel like I'm in more meetings than I need to be most of the time, but I
Mhm.
just try and remind myself that, having a seat at the table for those meetings is super important because then they understand what we need and why we need it, whether if, our goal is to try not to say no as much as we can.
Yep.
But if we have to say no, we want to make sure that they understand the reasoning behind that. And, it's going to be usually it would only be because it's detrimental to the event. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just trying to be communicative with as many different departments as we can and collaborate as best we can as well.
Definitely. And we talked a little bit when I was down there, or I guess up there, or across
Yeah,
there with you
over there.
over there. That you met your wife when you were in Maryland, and then this position came up, and you guys, you were on the cusp of well, you had just bought in a house in
Yeah,
Maryland, so it was like
yep.
another huge life decision. What really gives you the confidence, or to make those big decisions, whether moving in the first place to Maryland and taking a chance, not only on yourself, but taking a chance on this industry that, they're going to take care of you and it's going to be worth this huge life changing moment, but then also doing it again to come back to New England and, taking that confidence not only in yourself, but in the industry that it's going to work out.
Yeah, I think starting with moving to Maryland, I'd love to say I had this superior confidence in myself and felt like I was ready to do it, but at the end of the day, it was out of necessity.
Yep.
I needed a full-time job. I had a lot of Weston is someone that I specifically, I think I mentioned it last time we even had this conversation when he was on here, is like I sat in my car and had a conversation with him and said, there's this opportunity. I don't know anything about the state. I don't know anything about the job really, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a good opportunity. And he was a great influence to say, listen, at the time I didn't have a significant other. I didn't have any real ties besides family in New England. So it was a good opportunity to try it. And, you have to have some confidence that you're going to be able to be successful and do what you need to do to get down there. But for me, again, I needed a full-time job and it was
Yep.
the one that was available and was offered to me. And I took the risk and, could have said no and tried to make it work around here. But, I'm a big believer in everything kind of happens for a reason and
Mm-hmm.
ended up moving down there. And like I told you the other day, that's where I met my wife. So, our shop at the soccerplex was right down the driveway from the driving range. That was also in the same park that we had. And we joke all the time that was the best I ever got at golf when I was trying to get her number because I was at the
Nice.
driving range every single day. So we met and, moving back was tough. We had waited a long time to buy a house down there and we finally bit the bullet and bought a house in like April of 2019. And I got a call in June of 2019 about the potential to come back to New England. And she had a great job in Maryland that she really loved, and so it was a lot of long conversations about it. And at the end of the day, she was, I owe everything to her because she uprooted from her family that was down there, her job that was down there, and we just took a flyer and came up here because at the end of the day, these positions don't come up very often. And, we were also, we were getting married in September of that year in Maine. So it was a busy fall with moving and kind of uprooting our whole life to come up here. But, I'm grateful that she was willing to take that leap with me. So,
Definitely. I always like to make sure I find an angle to make it clear to our listeners that it's all about the woman you got at home for sure.
yeah, I mean,
That's been the
it's,
main trait of
yeah,
all of our pioneers in the field this year is that the woman is holding it down and she's, the MVP of all these stories.
she's a rock. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without her. I can tell you that much right now.
I love it. And sorry, what is her name?
Alexis.
Alexis. You told me that.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, our
Yep.
coffees said Alexis because
Yeah.
you, you were using her
Using
app to
her
get
app.
us Starbucks. Look at
Right
that.
there. Yep.
That's wonderful. And what elements of this job, this industry, I know, we love the camaraderie. We love being outside, those things. But what elements of this job are super rewarding to you? Like the things that, you are willing to pick up your life two times and move cross coast, I would say, in order to, stay in this industry and pursue next level job in this industry.
Um, I think it's a lot of what we talked about, like a lot of what you mentioned. One of my favorite things to do is, and I preach this to our staff a lot, is to try and take a step back and look at what we do every day because you can get really ground down and burnt out
Hmm.
with the schedule that we have, and it seems like we're just go 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 all the time. But for me, one of my favorite things to do is to bring people into the stadium, whether it's a friend or a colleague that has kids love soccer or love football, and just bring them into the stadium and show them the field and get them out on the field and see them running around and how much it means to them because we lose that a little bit when we're here every day.
Yeah.
It's just work to us. It's just another day on the field for us. But for some people, it may be the only time they'll ever get to the stadium to watch a football game in their life, and it means a lot to them. And for us to be able to present that product on the field, whether it's on the stadium field, obviously aesthetics is a huge part of what we do because it's an artificial turf field, and we want to make sure that the lines and the logos and everything look as crisp as possible, so that when people come into the stadium and you walk up the stairs and you come through that tunnel, and the first thing you see is Elvis in the middle of the field or the end zones or whatever it is. We want that experience to be a really good one and a
Hmm.
positive one for whoever that is. So to me, that's a big one, and I make myself honestly think about that as much as I can because you have to remind yourself of those moments, or else you're just gonna get it's just another day.
Yep. I
Question.
love that.
You said
Yes.
Elvis. Is that what people call the mascot of the
This is
Patriots?
this is
Elvis?
this is the flying Elvis. Yep.
Really? I
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were just like making a reference to like a
I'm
musical
like,
star
Elvis
or something.
Presley? That's
Yeah, no,
hilarious.
that's what we just call him Elvis, but that's the flying Elvis logo. And I think, yeah, then old school is Pat the Patriot. So it just happened. It's good
Okay.
timing to have this on, but
Look at
I feel
yeah.
that.
like I should know these things. I'm
That's
ashamed.
The
very
old the
cool.
old Revolution logo was the crayon flag. Now they just have a crest. But yeah, so there's all people have different names for different stuff, but for us it's Elvis.
That's
Very
great.
cool. And
Yep.
you're New England, Maine area born and raised. How cool is it to be, the lead guy for the team that you grew up, loving? Or I assume that you were a Patriots fan. Uh-oh.
Um
Oh,
I will say that growing up in New England and working here is an incredible experience.
Hmm.
I know how passionate fans of this team and this region are for everything that comes down to every sport. And I grew up watching every sport. I may or may not have cheered for another team as a child, but that's as far as I'll go. And I'm very happy to be here and working for the team that I work for right now.
I love that. So
Big
you
man,
won't
find
take
out
any
big.
offense to my Cavs shirt, and we're gonna beat you
No, I take
guys.
a ton of offense to that shirt actually, because I've
Well,
been a Celtics fan my entire life, and
well, we're coming
you
for
know,
you. We're
yeah,
number one
okay. Well,
seed. We clinched it last night. It's secured. We're number one.
The Cavs are
it's just
actually
gonna,
kind
it's
of.
gonna. I was gonna say it's just gonna hurt more to lose the series at home.
Yikes.
Oh, the Cavs are Meg's second job unofficially through her
Truly.
gambling.
I have a bit of a sports gambling thing that I like to do.
Only on the Cavs,
Gotcha.
though.
But I only bet
Right.
on the Cavs. I keep it very, clean. I'm not trying to get roped into any lifestyle changes. But no, I
You may
love.
want to stop that if they play the Celtics in the playoffs. That's all I'll say.
Well, this is what I will say. So my husband, we're season ticket holders, so he had access to playoff tickets. And he texted me, and I was here at work, and he was like, "They're really expensive," like dot dot dot. And I wrote back, "That's okay." And I'm reading it like, "That's okay. We don't need them." Like, and he
Oh,
took that as, "That's okay. Buy them." So I
like
really
that.
do hope that we get to, the conference finals with the Celtics because we're going to be able to sell those tickets. We need to get that money back because
Yeah.
I don't know
Yep.
what he was thinking. And I will say, like, I think a lot of people would come to Cleveland from Boston because I think our tickets will be cheaper. I mean, I hear that it's impossible to get tickets to like a Celtics game in Boston. So hopefully if they come to town that, that's all I'm vested in is the money element of this.
Ryan,
Look
Just
at
want to show
question
that.
you
question.
this is some confetti that got popped last year on the floor at the Garden.
Nice.
I don't know if you were aware of who won or not last year, but
I was, but I'm also aware. I'm like gonna print out that photo of Jason Tatum, like saying like get him out of here after they were leading us by 20 points, and then my boy
yeah.
Donovan Mitchell shut that shit down.
Whoa, hey now.
We
Okay, you
came
can take
back and
those
we
regular season
cleaned
wins as all
house.
you want. Yeah.
But all seriousness, are you interested in some tickets in Cleveland if the Celtics
Yes,
come back
yeah.
down?
Hard pass on that one. I
Top
appreciate.
dollar,
I'll
top
watch
dollar.
from the comfort of my couch.
Yeah, I don't think I'll go to a single playoff game like because I used to work downtown at a pub right across from the Q at the time when LeBron had his like couple seasons of playoff, and it is madhouse. Like I don't
Hmm.
feel, I mean, it's very cool for people that can be immersed in that environment and have a good time. For me, I'm
Yep.
thinking like traffic, logistics, safety. Like I can't
Yeah.
enjoy myself. So I really not sure why he bought the tickets, but we need to sell them. Like we need to sell them top
I'm
dollar.
sure,
Better
I'm sure
publish
it
this
won't be
episode
hard to
quickly.
get rid of them. Yeah.
Oh goodness. But back on track. I apologize. I just had to
It's
let the
okay.
record show that, when this is posted, people can go back and see that I had predicted properly that the Cavs will take it. They'll take it all
We'll
the
see.
way.
We'll see.
So, when I was at the campus facility with you, lots of projects. Like there were projects happening as we were looking at them, lots of things coming down the line. What are some of the things that you're excited about or just where you feel like you can really utilize like your passion towards certain projects you guys have coming down the line?
Yeah, there's always something going on here for sure from a construction standpoint, and whether it's the stadium construction or field construction, or they're building a new Chick-fil-A on site, which is going to be a real problem for me.
Yes, you
Um,
said that.
there's a lot going on. Like right now, currently, we've got the new training center for the Patriots is being built.
Hmm.
So right now, the weight room, locker room, everything that team needs is based out of the stadium. So they have to walk out of the stadium, come up to the practice fields, and it's a not a short walk to get out there. So it's just not logistically doesn't make a ton of sense. And so they're building a brand new facility for them that'll house everything they need from locker rooms, weight room, training facility, hydrotherapy, equipment room, cafeteria. So they'll only be in the stadium on game days moving forward. So that's, you saw it when you were here, the steel's going up for that now. They're trying to have that open by, spring of next year. And part of that project is it's adjacent to one of our three practice fields for them. So last fall, we did a lot of advanced prep work on that. We knew we were losing around 60 feet of space along the
Hmm.
entire east side of the field. So we relocated a lot of our utilities, irrigation, everything that we needed to in. And so we're preparing to, um, you know, do what we need to on the field to accommodate the building that's going in. So that's a big part of the project. We also did a renovation on our two upper practice fields
Hmm.
this past fall, where they were built in 1999 and 2000 and hadn't really been fully renovated since then. So we did a small renovation. We essentially pulled the root zone out that had been stitched previously, screened all the old fibers out of it, actually reinstalled the root zone back in because we were happy with how it responded agronomically and culturally. We put some fresh sand and blended the whole profile down 10 inches. So now we've got a nice consistent profile across the whole surface. We were able to laser grade the fields, which is the first time that's ever been done. And then we sodded them in December, and now we're starting to wake them up. And as we speak, we're finishing up stitching the centers of the field. So in between each set of numbers on each field, we're going to have a hybrid system, Deso Grassmaster that'll be wrapped up today. And I'm trying to think what else. I mean, there's just always other things that are happening.
Definitely.
But that's a lot of what we got going on from a project standpoint. And as we get farther and farther along with the Patriots Training Center, we'll have to install a new cart path, and we'll have to install an artificial turf pad along the front of the building. And so we're just kind of checking those boxes off as we go.
Definitely. And this is typically everyone's favorite question, especially for people that like to talk about themselves as much as groundskeepers do.
As you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what kind of legacy do you really hope to be building and, one day leave, whether it's with this facility or just with your career? What do you really hope that when people say like, oh, Ryan Bjorn, he was at Gillette, or Ryan Bjorn, I got to work for him, one summer. What do you really hope that sentiment is that they remember you by?
Wow. That's a
I
tough
told you
one.
it was a doozy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think to me, I hope it's a pretty simple one. I just hope that people enjoyed their time with and their experiences working with me,
Hmm.
whether it's as employees or as coworkers, and we're able to learn, especially other, turf employees that we have or the turf staff that we have. I hope people are able to learn and move on and move up. And the goal, another thing I learned from Jared when I was at the soccerplex was, it's nice to have staff for a long period of time, but it's also the goal. That should never be our goal, is to get people in and keep them for a long time,
Hmm.
especially, whether it's assistants in training or assistants or whatever it is. The goal is always to get them trained and have them prepared for that next role,
Hmm.
because I wouldn't be where I am today if my managers throughout my career didn't do that.
Yep.
And I feel very lucky to have been through that process. So, I'd love to retire whenever that is, and have a bunch of people that have worked with me that are now head superintendent somewhere, and it's just creating that inclusiveness and working together and collaboration. That's what I'd like to, I guess, have. But yeah, that's a hard one to answer.
Well, you answered it wonderfully. That was very, that it definitely can encapsulate a legacy of sense. So those are the end of the tough questions. But I'll
Okay.
I'll leave us with one last question. What are the things that you like to do outside of the job? What are the things you're listening to? What are you watching right now? Who are you outside of work at this moment?
And what are we watching right now? We just finished White Lotus. That
Okay,
was crazy.
you're one of those
Uh,
freaks.
Yeah, we watch a lot. My wife and I watch a lot. We watched Severance. That was a good one. She
Nice,
hated it.
nice.
I love it. There's just that's the type of stuff. We're not a ton into movies. We love series.
Yes.
Outside of work, besides that, I love to golf. I don't get to do it as much as I'd like to because we're always busy throughout the summer, but I love to be able to do that when I can. Um, just being able to see family, see friends, try and disconnect when we get away, we try and actually get away. And again, extremely grateful to my staff here
Hmm.
that allows me to be able to do that, where I know that whether it's Chris Hurley, or our assistant that oversees the Revolution training facility, or Drew Kewen that oversees the Patriots training facility, I know that if I need to go away for a weekend, or if I'm going to a wedding or whatever it is, that I can shut the work phone off and I don't have to
Nice.
worry about what's happening here. And the credit all goes to the staff for that, because it's a huge relief for me, and also for Alexis, really, that I don't have to be worrying about it, which means that she doesn't have to be worrying about me worrying about it.
Yeah,
And so it's nice to be able to just get away.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
so Rick had shared with us that, he lived in Maine all of his life, but he had never been to Acadia. I hope you don't have a similar story. I hope you've been up there.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
So I grew up in Central Maine, in near the University of Maine, and like we would go to Acadia on field trips, or
So
I've been
cool.
down there. We didn't really vacation down there, because he may have told you this too, but in general, people in Maine that are from Maine don't necessarily go to those places during the summer, because
Yep.
that's just tourist central and it's crazy. And like where my family lives now in Kennebunk, it's very similar. Like we don't really, we try to avoid it as much as we can in those crazy times, but the locals have their spots that they can go to, that
Nice.
it's you can enjoy what Maine has to offer without dealing with thousands of French Canadian tourists all the time. So
Definitely. We'll keep those under wraps because yeah, I was sharing with Rick that, I really wanted to get back up there and I told him that I went like the summer of COVID, so it was like dead. Like I just showed
oh
up to a
yeah.
campground, no reservation, literally got the nicest like site you can imagine. It was right on like wherever I forget what the island was called, but like where the tide goes down and you can walk across, it was right
Hmm.
there. And he's like, you can never go back. He's like,
Yeah.
it will absolutely ruin it for you. He's like, it
Yeah.
is insane up there. Like, you can't find a place to sit or park or whatever. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
so sad. My days are over. But I experienced it in its most perfect form.
No, that's great. Yeah. I was it's a running joke with our staff here. Like I talk about Maine a lot, and they give me a hard time about it. Oh, are you from Maine? I didn't know that. So, I can't speak highly. I hated it growing up. I couldn't
Really?
wait to get out of the state. I thought it was like there was nothing going on here about. And as soon as I left for like the first semester of college, it's like, okay, Maine's pretty solid. Like
I
I
love
get
that.
it now. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time today. I know you've got a Pioneer rep bringing you lunch today, to
Yeah,
thank you
Maddie
for
Tobin.
doing this interview. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Our staff's definitely going to appreciate it. So,
good. We'll
and probably Boyd will
give
get a
him our
little treat too.
hellos. I just got to spend some time with them, but make sure you tell him we said hi.
I will. I will.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you,
Um,
guys.